Hey, so this was initially supposed to air at about 6:30. It was supposed to be live, and well, that didn't happen. There was a lot of technical difficulties. I tried to sign in to do live on YouTube at about 6:30, and it was like, no, you're not allowed to do this right now, and it was a lot of problems. So I put in Plan B, which was just coding it, which also had problems because I didn't have enough storage space on my device. So little bits of it are not there, and I can't put them in because they didn't get recorded because it just stopped recording, and then they had to like figure it out, hit it again, I had to notice, then hit it, then all that. So some pieces are missing. I'm sorry about that, and especially from the first one, which is the longest piece, and then there was short clips after that. So there were some pieces missing in between. I apologize for that, and it will be better next time. I'm still figuring all this out. So yes, please enjoy. But I kind of got the idea for my topic and for one of the scriptures I'm going to use. I kind of am stealing a little bit from a chapel that happened this past Tuesday from a guy named Drew McCleo, something like that. Um, he is a youth pastor of one of the churches in Elizabeth City. Um, but one of the things that he talked about was um, how back when he was in college, that he was, doing stuff, doing sports and, working to get towards valedictorian, all that stuff, and how he became focused on that, and how he's now later realized that none of it mattered because he wasn't focusing on what he should have been focusing on. And he was focusing on all the temporary stuff that ultimately doesn't matter because it's not like it says that he did all the stuff on his degree. It just says that he did what he was supposed to do. And similarly, if we're not focusing on Christ, all of it's pointless because it's just temporary and it's all going to pass away. Because in like 1,000 years from now, nobody's going to remember our names. Maybe a few of us will be remembered, and that'll be in the history books. That's about it. And even still, we like just uncovered like in the past in the 1900s, I think it was the 40s, something like that. They just cracked like the Egyptian language. So all that stuff that they wrote had been pointless for that entire time because nobody knew how to read it. But I kind of want to take the central idea and put it into this. So I kind of open up with what I'm talking about because I'm building on top of this. So I used to be in the NJOTC program. And that program is a great program, but also you can be a little prideful in that program as well. So I eventually became the supply officer, and like nobody thought I would ever become an officer in the unit. People that were officers said, no way, this boy's becoming an officer, and I did. And I was proud of it. I was proud of it. And I had a little bit of pride there. Not in God, but in myself. And in the unit, we had ribbon racks, right? That said what you've done. You get ones for like community service, for doing color guards, for being on teams, all that kind of stuff. And I used to be very proud of that ribbon rack because, hey, look at all the stuff I did. Look at what you didn't do. Look how mine's bigger than yours. And it was a pride thing. And I was taking pride in something that didn't matter because if I told someone I had a big ribbon rack nowadays, most of them don't know what I'm talking about. No one cares. None of it mattered. And I became so proud of my accomplishments that ultimately didn't matter, that they were just temporary things. And this even extended to church because I was going to church every Sunday. And I was doing all the stuff that I had to do, and I was, doing some serving here and there, but I was missing the point of it all. Because I wasn't doing it for Jesus, I was doing it for me. Because I wanted to be seen. I want to be, hey, you're awesome. And that's not how we should be going about it. And so I want to go into the first passage of scripture today, Luke 10:38 through 42. You would, yes. I'm not sure if you can read that or not. I hope you can. But that's like a little extra. I'm going to read the whole thing for you. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village. And a woman named Martha welcomed them into her house. And she had a sister called Mary. who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. So to kind of recap what's going on here, Jesus and his disciples are going through town. This chick Martha sees him go through town and says, hey, come stay at my place. And so they do. And as Martha and Mary's just, I don't know, been chilling at home, I guess, just doing her thing. And Jesus comes, and she's sitting there listening to Jesus. She's sitting before Jesus, listening to him, while Mary's running around. And it isn't specific what she's doing, but my guess is she's probably, being a good host. Hey, can I get you something? Hey, can I flip that pillow for you? Setting up rooms, make sure everything's nice and neat, because Jesus was there. She went in everything tip-top shape, was making sure he was welcome in every possible way, being a good host. But she was missing the point. And Jesus makes that clear in what he said. Because Martha wasn't just doing the serving, but she was upset with Mary because Mary was just sitting there doing nothing. And usually we're like, yeah, she should get up and do something. But that's not what Jesus said. Because Jesus says that Mary took the better option. That he didn't say that Martha was doing bad stuff. By all means, she was probably doing some good stuff. She was serving her Lord. But she was also missing the point. Because Mary got that point. Mary was doing what was best. Because she was doing what mattered for eternity. She was listening to Jesus, learning what he had to say, listening to his teachings, learning about our salvation. While Martha was just running around serving, not really listening to that. While she was getting mad at her sister, who was sitting there listening to that. She was all focused on the temporary, rather than what really mattered. And back in RTC, I was like Martha. I was working on the temporary stuff. And anybody who wasn't new, so I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Come on, do stuff. But I was missing the point. And so, I want to come to our first question, which is, when have you gotten caught up in the temporary? Because I got caught up in getting more evidence. And working towards temporary stuff is ultimately fruitless and pointless. It doesn't matter. In about 1,000 years, most people will have no idea what you did. Will have no idea how many things you did. Will have no idea how many evening services you sat through. Because that's not what's important. Because our goal is that they will know Jesus. Our goal should be what matters for eternity, not what matters right now. Not in the temporary, but on the eternal. And so I want to move into Romans. And this is why I'm kind of lumping stuff on. And I'm going to go from 118 all the way through 320. I'm not going to read all that because that's a lot to read. But I'm going to kind of hit highlights and summarize it all. So Paul in Romans, in this section of Romans, is setting up the case for grace. And if you've read this part, you know he does not talk about grace in this part. He set up the case for it. So he's talking about how there's a law and that we've all defied that law. Kind of put out a specific verse, and 3, that should be a 10, not a 20. But none is righteous, no, not one. Which are some pretty heavy words. But ultimately, are true. Because we've all been given a law, but we've all broken that law. And so Paul opens up talking about the Gentiles in 118 through 32, pretty much the later half of the first chapter. First half's, all about, hey, I'm Paul, use my credentials, I want to go to Rome, and then he starts getting into this. And he's talking about the Gentiles. And he opened, and well, two verses I want to point out is 19 and 20. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. And Paul speaks more on Gentiles a little bit later in 2:15, which is what most of us would be able to recognize, which is they show that the work of the law is written upon their hearts. That Gentiles have a law written upon their hearts, and that's the judgment, and that's what they're going to be judged against, is that law written on their hearts. Most of us would just recognize that as a conscience. We generally know right from wrong. And that's what Paul's talking about here, that they have a general sense of right and wrong. And there is also the idea of general revelation, that we can know God from nature. And as he says, for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived. And so his whole point here is that Gentiles are without excuse, that they have fallen short just as much as the Jews have. And so he's not singling anyone out here. So the first person he says is Gentiles, they're messed up, they ain't doing right, because they have this law written on the hearts of men, but they still defied it. Because there's not a single one of us that have not done anything that we thought was maybe a little questionable in our lives. There's not a single person that hasn't told a little white lie every now and then. There's not a single person that hasn't maybe a little bit, and even just in their heart, disobeyed the parents a little bit. Because it's just something as simple, it can be something as simple as that, or it can be something as grand as theft or murder. But either way, we are still without excuse. And so Paul moves on to talk about Jews. And this is pretty much the entirety of chapter 2, talking about Jews. Because even the Jews haven't adhered to the law. And he says in this that they have an advantage because they have the Mosaic law. They have the Old Testament. They have the special revelation of God. That God came to them, talked to them, and said, hey, very clearly, this is what you should do. And this is what you should not do. And they still did what they should not do. There was no ambiguity about it. God was very clear. Do the rituals that we're supposed to be doing. Because, he says that circumcision is a matter of heart by the Spirit, not by the letter. So he's saying, hey, don't just do the law to the letter and you'll be fine. No, he's saying it has to be an inward thing. That we have to do things on an inward faith-based level. Rather than just, hey, these are the works that I got to do to be saved, that's it. That's not, he's saying the complete opposite here. And so he moves on in the beginning of chapter 3 to everyone in 1 through 20. And because Paul's talked about the Gentiles and say they have a law written on the hearts of men, they have no excuse. The Jews had the very specific laid out law, the Mosaic law, and still broke it, so they have no excuse. So now, he says, none is righteous, no, not one. And he's actually referencing an Old Testament passage here in Psalms. That none is righteous, no, not one. That this isn't just a Paul idea, this stems back all the way to the Old Testament. That there is none righteous. Now we've all messed up, which is setting up grace. It says in verse 20, for by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. So Paul is saying that just doing the works of the law is not going to save you. Because the term justification here means being declared righteous, declared not guilty. And of course, he does say another point in all of this, that if you perfectly hold to all the laws, yeah, you're not guilty because you were never guilty to begin with. The thing is, we're all guilty. So just doing the works will not make you not guilty. Because we like to think of it as a scale. So, you put a little bit bad here, put a little good here, it evens out, it's fine. That's not at all how it works. You put a little bad here, but as you try to put good here, the good is already expected of you. It's just like paying bills, for example. If you spend something that you shouldn't have spent money on, get a little bit of debt, but all of your money is going towards bills, well, that money is going to go towards bills because you already expected to pay those bills. So that's never going to get paid because it's already expected of you to pay other things. So the same thing with good works. You're already expected by God to do good works. So you can't do extra good works because it's already expected of you. And so that bad stays there. And the only thing that can fix that bad is being justified through faith, which we'll get to more in a minute. But that's his ultimate answer. That's what he's building up to, is that it's by faith we are justified. Because it's not just an outward thing. It's not just, hey, let me just do some good works. It's an inward thing. It's a faith thing. Like he says in chapter 4, that Abraham was justified by his faith. So he wasn't exactly completely righteous in his works, but he had faith in God's promise. And the promise that there was a seed of Abraham coming, the promise that God would bless him, and the promise that Christ was coming. And so we get to the next question. If you want to write it down, you can. In what ways have you tried to be outwardly a Christian, but not inwardly? And this would be my senior year of high school, because we like to put on a show. We like to go mass and say, hey, look at us, we're good Christians. But in reality, what's going on in our heart? Because during that time when I was in OTC doing stuff, that, my body was like, I was doing outwardly, just fleshly thing, and hey, go do this, go do that, you're doing good works, you're fine. But in my heart, I was longing for other things. I was longing for pride and for other sinful things, rather than longing for God. Rather than having faith in Jesus, I was having faith in myself, which is not the right way of going about it. And thus it was all just temporary stuff. There was nothing for the kingdom there, because my heart was in the wrong place. Because I was being outwardly a Christian and not inwardly one. And so let's move on to Romans 3:21 through 31, where Paul starts to get what he's been building to. Because our salvation is via Jesus. Our salvation is in him. And the two specific verses I want to read to you are 21 and 22. But now the righteousness of God has been manifested apart from the law, although the law and the prophets bear witness to it. The righteousness of Christ through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. So Paul here is saying that through the works of the law, ain't nobody going to be justified. But rather, righteousness and justification has been manifested apart from the law. Though the law and all the prophets, so all the Old Testament points to this, but the righteousness doesn't come from it. Rather, righteousness comes through faith in Jesus. Through faith in Jesus for all who believe, and what he did for us. Because he made a promise to us that we are saved, that we have redemption from our wrongs, that he can balance that scale out. Because he can take off that debt, he can pay it. And only he can. That no amount of good works is going to pay that debt. So Jesus comes by and says, hey, let me pay it for you. We have to have faith in that promise. We have to trust in what he said. Because without it, that debt's never getting paid. When we put faith in us, thinking that we can pay that debt, well, we're just being blind. We're being misguided because we can't. because we're not able to pay that debt. Because any good work we do is already expected of us. And so Jesus is the only one who can pay. But this is where Mary is right, because she's focused on the eternal stuff. She had the inward faith, that she was focused on Jesus rather than just doing works. Because she had faith in what Jesus was saying, rather than Martha, who was just going around doing works, being the outward. Rather than Mary, who God was like, who had chosen the best thing to do, which was listen to Jesus, just listen to him talk and teach about what truth is, about probably talking about salvation, as he did in multiple occasions. That she was in there discipling herself to him, and she had that inward faith rather than the outward faith. And that's why Jesus didn't berate her, saying, hey, don't help your sister, because her sister was one that needed to come and sit down too, and listen, and learn. And so, our focus must be on Jesus. And it can't be on the works. It can't be just on the outward things that we do. It can't just be, okay, look at me. I do community service all the time. What are you doing? That can't be your focus. And it can't be the works, just the rituals of the church. It can't just be, all right, take some communion, get baptized, whatever. I'm good. That's it. No. I mean, even Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians, it's one of the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, I think, where he talks about how they're wrongly taking communion. That he's talking about how some of them are taking all the communion while others are going hungry. And he outright says that this is why you're getting sick. That there are actual physical implications to improperly taking communion. To having the wrong heart about it. That it's not just a works of law thing. It has to be a faith thing. You can't get caught up in the works of service, just doing community service, just doing volunteer work. You can't get caught up in that. We can't become prideful in that. Because then we're having faith in us and not in Jesus. We're doing it for us, not for Jesus. But then it doesn't matter. Because it's just a temporary thing we're doing. There ain't going to be some dude 1,000 years from now, it's like, all right, this dude did some pretty good community service. No, they're not going to remember. It's not going to matter. Because if you're having faith in yourself and not in Jesus, it's not like you're going to be in heaven. Because you're having the outward faith and not the inward faith. You don't have the faith of Jesus. That's where your faith needs to be. That's where your heart needs to be. We can't be caught up in works like Martha, just trying to do the works, rather than actually sitting there and listening to what's going on, instead of paying attention to what Jesus is trying to say. Because we can get caught up in doing all the busy work and miss what's trying to be taught to us, like Martha did. Because if we're just doing work, and not listening to what he's saying, maybe that's not the work he wants us to be doing right now. Maybe he's got something more important for us to be doing. Maybe he wants us sitting there and listening, rather than doing works. Now, I'm not saying that doing works is a bad thing. Doing works, and we need to be Christians inwardly and not outwardly. Because being a Christian outwardly ultimately means nothing, because we're missing the point. And the point of Jesus coming down wasn't for us to just go do some community service at the soup kitchen every week. But the point was our salvation. That he came to save the world. And that's what his promises talk about, is him saving the world. It's him coming, saving us from our sin, so that we might be able to join him. And that's the whole point of it all. That I had so easily missed back then. And a point that I still miss sometimes even now. And I can get so caught up in all the schoolwork and all the stuff I'm doing for school and forget that I'm doing it for Jesus, not for myself. But sometimes I have to stop myself from being, hey, what are you doing? I'm doing all this. Because I still want to do that sometimes. And I still got to stop myself from doing that. And I'm not, and I say this because I'm not all perfect on this either. That this is very much towards me as it is to everyone. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for such a beautiful day, Lord. We thank you for all that you've done for us. And Lord, we thank you for your promises that you've given us, Lord. And Lord, by you and by you alone, may we be saved from our sins. And Lord, through you, may we be truly forgiven. May that debt truly be paid. And may we have that inward faith that we need in you, Lord. In the name of Christ Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let's stand and sing.